Espero que hagueu gaudit molt totes i tots d'aquestes dues primeres presentacions. Bill Cusick, Joana Zilinska, han estat genials. I ara passarem la paraula a una investigadora de la Universitat de la Northern Illinois University, Andrea Guzmán, així com a la Joana Zilinska parlava castellà, tot i que res indicava que pogués fer-ho, l'Andrea Guzmán farà la presentació en anglès. Ella presentarà Communication and Authorship in an Age of Artificial Intelligence. Where does metaphor and reality begin? I us faré una breu descripció de qui és la Andrea Guzmán. Andrea Guzmán is an Associate Professor of Communication at Northern Illinois University and co-director of the Human Machine Communication Lab. Her research focuses on people's perception of artificial intelligence, including voice-based assistants and automated news writing programs. Guzmán is lead editor of the Sage Handbook of Human-Machine Communication and Human-Machine Communication twice, so there's a mistake, Rethinking Communication Technology and Ourselves. Guzmán's award-winning research has been published in top journals and has been presented at leading interdisciplinary and disciplinary conferences. Guzmán is a former award-winning journalist. So, thank you very much for being here, Andrea, and the word is yours.
Okay. All right, well. Hello, thank you for having me. I will be presenting in English as I confusingly do not speak Spanish, and I can explain that and how my name all work together during a break. But thank you very much for this kind introduction. So yes, I work in communication scholarship. I bridge the humanities and the social sciences. And so as a former journalist, as someone who teaches journalism and also teaches media creators, including our film students, I've been thinking a lot lately about this idea of authorship, right? Or being an artist or being a creator, as well as this idea of metaphor. Part of this presentation actually kind of came to me while I was attending a Microsoft research kind of group meeting on metaphor as well. So I'd like to give credit to Microsoft Research for convening that. Nope. Trying to advance the slide. Nope, that's not, hold on, there, okay, here we go. All right, so I want to begin, as a cultural scholar, I want to begin thinking about the relationships between humans and machines, between the natural and artificial. Because the conversations we're having today actually begin a long, long time ago, thousands of years ago, when humans started to create tools to help to control and take over their world. But part of what humans also were doing at that time, right, was trying to recreate and thinking about humanity as well. And so this picture we have here from 1856 of the Lackawanna Valley, and actually for those of you who've ever read Leo Marx's The Machine in the Garden, this is one of the covers for the book. And here you have the steam engine, right? So the Industrial Revolution. And you have the steam engine coming through this very pastoral setting. And there's a debate about this representation here. It's is this a celebration of showing what modern humans can do, right? To traverse geography, to build an iron horse, or is this a commentary on the cleavage of the natural and the unnatural, right? Of the coming of something that will soon take away this pastoral setting and, as we know through the Industrial Revolution, be ripped apart. And so there has always been this kind of tension. And of course, it's important to remember that this is extremely cultural. Today, I am speaking, right, from a more of a Western, right, understanding, an Anglophone understanding of artificial intelligence, as well as technology and machines, and I want to acknowledge that. What started to push these questions of the nature of humans and machines even further, right, comes with the development of the computer. So on your right-hand side, you have the image of Alan Turing, who helped to create machine intelligence, and wrote some of the first pieces. Many people know his quote-unquote Turing test, but actually in pieces much earlier, he talked about this idea of how computers, which were very different at the time, would begin to challenge what we know of human beings. And as computers developed, we also have works by theorists such as Norbert Wiener, who thought about what does it mean to be a human within these spaces of artificiality in building computers, but at the same time, how we can use the natural world to think about the computing world and how the computing world can help us to think about the natural world. So one thing that's important to know about Wiener when we're talking particularly about communication and communication scholarship is that at this time, at least within the English-speaking world, within Norbert Wiener's world, communication was not necessarily limited to humans only, right? That's more of a modernist perspective. Communication was something that could occur among animals, that could occur among humans and animals, and more importantly, could occur among machines. And so started to think about, well, what does communication flows, feedback flows mean between the human and the machine? Now, if we think about communication theory, media theory, for most of the 20th century, right, it is an idea of technology as a tool, right, of using cinema to convey information, of using the radio to convey information, and then television, right, and then the internet. And this is to not say, of course, that the medium was not important. Right? If we think about McLuhan's work, with all of its faults, as well as those of the Toronto School and what came later in critical and cultural critiques, is that the medium itself matter. But if we were to model what this looks like, right? And here I'm using the representation of journalism. We thought of communication as something that occurs through technology, right? That you have a journalist, a communicator, a human, right? Creating content that they could directly set out to the internet, which then could go to the audience member if we're thinking about conveying information through social media. Or it can go through the news organization and be published again through the medium, through a newspaper, remember those, and then go out to the audience, right? And so the key role of technology, at least in how we theorized it, for most of the ideas, fields of communication, be it journalism, be it other areas of media production, media creation, was that the technology was the tool. It did shape the communication. It was important. But a communication largely occurred through the technology. Within the last decade or so, I always think it's interesting the hype that's occurring around generative AI right now. But what we've been seeing, particularly, for example, in journalism, we've been seeing AI and automation in journalism now for over a decade. To the right, you have a representation of an automated journalist, right? Or the robot journalist, as they're sometimes called. In the middle, you have a representation of Siri. And over closest to me, does anyone know who this is? Cortana. Right, so this is Cortana from Halo. I automatically know the Halo people, right, by nodding your heads. As well as what Microsoft based their virtual assistant off of. We could talk about this all day. We're not going to, but I'd be happy to talk about it more, all right? But so what starts happening though, is we start to increasingly exchange messages with machines, both overtly asking Siri, asking Cortana something, asking Alexa, having them respond, as well as once removed, right? So we have this representation of what used to be the interpersonal communication process, one-on-one, human to human, occurring human to machine. And then we have what used to be the mass communication process, where the machine was in between, now creating content that then went through a second machine and then went to the audience. And so what we have, if we were to take, for example, what the current journalism situation looks like, and again, kind of thinking then through, what this would look like in the film creation process as well, you'd still have a human involved, but now you also have automated writing programs that create content that then flow through the news organization and editors. Sometimes they're not even edited, they go right to the audience. You have the chat bots, right? So we have the creation of chat bots. And so what happens is we have the introduction then of these automated communicators. And so this got a lot of us thinking within communication that we really need to start rethinking the paradigm of our models, right? And again, pulling from media theory, right? Extending several decades back, pulling from the computers as social actors theories, but arguing that within the study of communication, within the study of media, that we need to acknowledge that machines are communicators. Now, I know some of you in here will be like, well, yes, of course, right? But when we started talking about this more than a decade ago, we had extreme resistance within the field. One of my people involved with this project was going to give a talk and had people walk out, communication scholars walk out, saying that, you can't count machines as communicators. The goal, though, in thinking of machines this way is not to flatten ontologies between humans and machines, which I'll talk about in a moment, but is to recognize their power. And I want to make that clear. What we're doing here is not a Silicon Valley move, right? We're like, oh, machines are communicators. We're going to use that to sell a product. We're saying, no, machines are communicators. They're things with which we create meaning. If we think about communication as a process with which we create meaning, human to human or human to machine, then we can really start to interrogate them as sites of power. Right? So I always you want to make that clear, and this is where I'm going to get to the metaphor part in a moment. And so through the International Communication Association, we established an interest group of human-machine communication, which I led. And what's unique about our area of study is that we bring together both social scientists as well as scholars in the humanities and scholars in the arts. So the Human Machine Communication Handbook, of which I'm lead editor, that's coming out, it's actually available for pre-order now. It'll be released later this month, has chapters by artists. It has chapters by critical scholars. It has chapters looking at colonialism and technology. And then it also has chapters by social scientists. Because we realize when we think about communication, when we think about what artificial intelligence means for our life, for our world, that we need to bring together the many different perspectives, the artists, the social scientists. In the United States, there is a great emphasis on what the technologists are doing, what sort of tools are being created, right? And that is actually also, if we're in a university setting, eating up a lot of our humanities monies, right? And it's taking money away from us. And I know that's just not in the United States. And what we're arguing is like, no, you need the social scientists, you need the humanities scholars to come in to understand what is occurring here. Now, to this idea of metaphor, right? Metaphors in communication are when we compare two things, right, in some way that are unalike, but to help people understand them. And so there is this debate, though, about how we've spoken about technologies of artificial intelligence and as well as robots. So here I'm quoting from ECBIA, right? Artificial Dreams, the Quest for Non-Biological Intelligence, 2008. So a lot of this was even pre-AI as we know it, and clearly pre-generative AI. But ECBIA says, with the passage of time, more and more human-like features of increasing subtlety and complexity are attributed to computers. What happens as a result of this tempting, slippery slope is that people get used to this way of using language. And this, in turn, seduces many people into uncritical acceptance of claims that would have been hard to even think about otherwise. In this manner, society collectively undergoes a conditioning process where its members unconsciously slip into metaphorical usage of anthropomorphic terms. And so this is where the debate about intelligence comes up. Is it a metaphor or a machine's intelligent? We could also think about this idea of communication. Is communication a metaphor, saying that humans communicated first, and so when we use it with machines, we're using it in the metaphorical sense? Or are we now using it in the literal sense? And so this how we discuss these technologies gets all wrapped up in our thinking about them. What is an author? What does it mean to be an author? What does it mean to be a journalist? Is a robot, is a technology that can write a news story, is it a journalist? Right? And so a big part of what we all need to do collectively, and I'm so glad to be speaking with creatives in here, it's my favorite audience, is to really start to think about those terms and how we can challenge them or use them in different ways. And so what is happening, to go back to the original machine, this nature versus artificial, is that we're engaging with this ontological wrangling. The metaphors, right, whether or not communication is a metaphor, author is a metaphor, goes back to how we previously conceptualized of what humans are, right? The name we decided to use culturally. And that's really important here, because a lot of what happens is often people will say, that's a human-only term. You can only use that to humans, right? And we like to act as if that was natural and it was God-given and poof, fell out of the sky. But we know, as critical people, that the decision to assign authorship to humans was a decision. And so what's important to remember and to reflect upon is that our current way of knowing and being isn't self-constructed. And that's what I tend to see go missing in a lot of these debates here. And so we need to think about how our past, right, has created our present, what we think of as human, of the terms we use, right? Whether it's metaphor or reality. And as we move into the future, to think more thoughtfully of how we discuss, create, name, and call, realizing that we're not just coming up with terms for today, we are shaping the debates of the future. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for this inspiring, wonderful presentation. Is there any question from the public? We have 1 minute. If not, I have a couple of them, yeah? The one is, are robots going to pay metaphorical taxes too, or real ones?
Right, you know, and that's always, you're right, because we always joke about taxes. Listen, we know the rich will tax anything, right? I think that's the answer to that one.
Okay, and the second one, the serious one.
Yes.
You've been talking about authorship, about the process of creation, relating the presentation to the creators that have preceded you. But I have a question that I'm repeating all the time when I have the opportunity to talk with colleagues. What happens with the artificial intelligence reader? And taking your words, what does it mean to be a reader in times of generative artificial intelligence? Because we talk about how it's affecting journalism, how robots are going to, in a very Latourian perspective, yeah, how they are actors in this network of the interchange of symbolic content. What happens with the reader? Do we have an answer for that question?
To the reader? So
the
in other words, just not thinking about it as a creator, right? But, you know, like not just the writer, but, you know, on the other side, correct? The reader. So kind of this Latourian perspective, and thank you for bringing this up. When we think about communication, we think about, you know, communication as being situated within social configurations. And I'm glad you brought this idea up in that we don't just sit within models, and of course, for a 20-minute presentation, you know, this is very streamlined, but it's not just human and machine, right? Or it is not just a artificial intelligent writing, right? Or creation, creating something and then it going out to a human. It sits among these layers of humans and machines, right? So you have algorithms. If you have a AI-generated news story that then is put out on social media, right, by a news organization, well, then you have the social media bots that are interacting with it, sharing it, and then you have humans interact with one another. You have algorithms deciding all this. And so, yes, thank you for bringing this up. It's not just humans exist here, machines exist here, we're sharing across. We're enmeshed, right? And we could argue that we've been enmeshed for a long time, right? And so, you know, going back to feminist works on the idea of the cyborg as well. So, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Andrea. Just a reminder, yeah, tomorrow we'll have the opportunity to listen again Andrea Guzmán and Joanna Zielinska in the After the Rain thing, yeah? So for those interested with this research and academic thing, all of you are invited to come. Thank you, Andrea, again.